good enough? How are we observing them? What are we looking for? Because these are the things that we need to look at in self-review. And we have to really build in that competency within the organization, that when we are trying to find out at what stage we are, and then where we are going, we try to do things in a slightly more perhaps academic and scientific way. And really, it's not rocket science. It is thinking out the steps. We have some colleagues from Indonesia, and they were explaining to us on Thursday, we had a lovely presentation from the group, how just by looking, for example, at exam results, every year. Now, this is something I believe you do in your schools. We are looking at exam results. But they did it in such a really good way, because they looked at how the distribution of marks was shifting from year to year. And they would pick out problems. So that analysis of the way students were achieving was done at classroom level, school level, district level, and then obviously the whole group of schools. And they would say things like, my goodness, our biology students are not doing well. Biology was considered to be one particular aspect. So they were looking at human resources issues, curriculum issues. One year after the other, those grades started improving. But why am I bringing up this example? We need to know how to analyze grades. We need to know what questions to ask. And I believe this is what we really mean by building the competence and the capacity of the school to do self-review.
Now, when we're doing self-review, we're trying to focus on the efficiency, effectiveness, and the impact. That's what we are trying to improve. We want to improve the efficiency, the effectiveness, and the impact. When we're looking at efficiency, what are we trying to see? We're going to try and see the input that we are putting in. Is it delivering the output? Is all the input appropriate? Let me go back to the previous slide. This is the output that we want, and this is the input. Is the input there for the output? Obviously not in our case. Although the desire is very much there, but the input, we do not know how to put it in. We just don't have the skills and the capacity to do it. And hence the output is not being achieved for us. For effectiveness, measure the extent to which your school has achieved its intended objective. So obviously, if the input is not of the quality that you need, the extent to which you have achieved the objective is obviously going to be diminished as well. And when you're looking at impact, how much of the problem has been resolved? How much of the English language competency of teachers have you been able to resolve? Is there any change, or is there no change at all? So, we now need to do self-review, but we need to understand where we have not been able to deliver and hopefully learn those skills better. Now, I'd like also to discuss certain strategies, or there were certain elements that are a very significant part of self-review that I think we were lacking in. Now, I'm not going to touch vision and improvement because we've already done that. The direction that the company is taking and how we need to move towards that together, and improvement related to it needs to be visible, and a lot of capacity building is associated with that. I'd like to talk about relationships. You've heard a lot about relationships from a number of speakers already. But I think what our concern was, when you're reviewing a school and when you are emphasizing change, you are questioning an individual's practice. And the questions that you raise about my practice is based on my beliefs and my values. Whatever has succeeded, whatever I've succeeded in, that's become part of my practice, and that's the value that I hold. Now, for review, we came in and we started to question people's reviews, the way people did things. But generally, we felt that this is what the response, this is the way we dealt with it. This is the relationship we tend to have. Yes, that's all, that's fine, but, you know, in my school, this is the way things are done. And that's the way I do things. And this is the way, you know, it really works out. And I think we need to now think about relationships a bit more. Do I need to be assertive? Where is do I need to be assertive in any kind of situation? Or do I need to be accommodating? What does accommodation mean? How do I, you know, have a more cooperative and a more collaborative role? And how do I build these relationships? Absolutely, and you're talking about the culture of a school, right? The culture of a school is the way the teachers plan their lessons and teach, and the way the learners are, you know, learning in a classroom and behaving and all. And that's the culture. And the culture is there because of the beliefs of the teachers and the staff. And now that's what you are questioning. You're coming in and telling me as a teacher that, look, you, whatever you've been doing for 12 years or 10 or whatever, maybe you would like to do it differently now. And that's not easy for me to accept. So relationship building and how to do it in a collaborative role is very significant. I think this was one of the areas where we genuinely now need to work towards. I think, Ji.
There needs to be a certain room for change because it's also depends where the campus is located. As we are on 4 campuses in Hyderabad.
Absolutely.
Is varying from one place to another.
Absolutely.
And I would allow the teachers to work as per the clientele temperament.
So how accommodating do you have to be? And, you know, I think you've really summed it up very well. And I think that's the key to it. And there was something that, you know, Simon was talking about. There was an example I think that he was giving that, you know, what sort of a collaborative role do you pick up? When somebody says, I don't do group work, then what do you ask? What question would you ask then? Okay, for collaboration and for interaction, what else do you do? What works for you? Instead of saying, no, Beaconhouse says group work and that's the way it has to be.
I would rather ask the
Yes.
problems and the reason why she's not doing it.
Yes. So, you know, so I think we tend to, a number of us, when we evaluate it, we kind of stuck to things that worked for us. And I think we need to review that a little more. And we need to be careful about not, you know, being too assertive. Ethics becomes a very significant part of how you handle people and how you handle the information that is coming in. And another aspect for us was that the information that was coming in, how credible and reliable was it? Were we all basing it on sound evidence and sound information that was coming in? And then how much information is acceptable? How many perspectives do you need? And how, you know, what sort of information would be sufficient to pass a judgment on? I think that's an area that we still need training on making evidence, having evidence reliable and valid. And I think what the entire conference sums up the last part, that it's how much you understand. And I think from the example that we just went through of the steps, it's how much in depth of understanding do you have about education. That will help you implement what you were intending to do as effectively as you possibly can. And I now hand over to Sam.
I'm just wondering, are you all going to rush out of the room? Because I just stood up. I'm just looking at that picture. Just one comment about self-review, because I understand it when we're talking about competence and building the capacity of the school. It's true, we can build some technical skills, but self-review is really quite simple. And I'm sure that in every school where you are, there are some really good examples. And hopefully, once we start our discussion groups, I would really like to hear about those. for me, self-review is about three questions. The first one is, what, if we're looking at something, some information that we have, when we have the data, what is this? What is it telling us? Why is it happening? And so what? So, bringing the example of the exam results. What are those exam results telling us? Why is this happening? What are the implications? What's going to happen? I'd like to frame these three questions around how are we looking at Beaconhouse at self-review. I'm going to give a presentation this afternoon about the external evaluation. But I want to share with you today, at this time, why we think that if we come in to externally evaluate schools and there is no or very little or inconsistent self-review, things will not change in the schools. We think that external evaluation is an important component, and let's put it this way, it's something that very few of us have a choice over. At some point it has to happen. There is this saying, which I don't totally agree with, but I can understand why people say it, is that nobody likes external review, but then very few people trust internal review. So it has to happen. But we believe that if it's done well, it could offer good feedback and help the school. But it cannot work without the school-based self-review. So the system we are designing is actually based very much on the schools improving the quality of the self-review. We want the schools to do as well as we can. And today we have to give Beaconhouse some directions that will result from our discussions. Is how can we make sure that that self-review is actually good quality, not just good quality, but what does good quality mean? What impact will that self-review have on improving outcomes for students? I think that is one major question we need to ask. I mean, just takes time, doesn't it? Do we have time to do self-review? One of the questions we have is, what are the blocks? What are the barriers to performing good self-review? And it's usually one of the things that most heads and teachers tell me, it takes time. And time could be used in other things, helping teachers, etc. So if we do self-review, what impact is it having in improving outcomes for students? And without having some really good planning and implementation, there is no way that all those findings of the self-review are going to have any impact. So if we do see that we need to improve our teaching in biology, how are we going to do it? So there comes the planning aspect. These three do come together